Hey guys, how's it going and welcome back for another Total War video with the Terminator. Of all the mods we're eagerly waiting for in Total War, the most highly anticipated has to be the Lord of the Rings mod for Attila, Dawnless Days. It's been in development for a few years now and you can download it right now to play custom battles and epic large-scale maps with a decent number of fleshed out factions. But there is no playable campaign yet, and that's what the team has been working so hard on to release. The last time I made a video about Dawnless Days was roughly 6 months ago when they got a copyright issue for their previous name, and 2 months before that I covered their Moria update, which added brand new battle maps, some fabulous new units like the custom made trolls, and more. So today in this video I wanted to get back into Dawnless Days to do another update about where it is right now. How close is it to releasing the campaign? How is progress going on the map editing tool and the campaign map itself? What sort of playable factions can we expect? And essentially, what's the latest news about this incredibly exciting mod? So let's get started. The first thing to talk about is that in the last 6 months or so, the mod team have released 2 dev blogs on their Discord. The first, named Dwarves of the East, essentially confirms that certain Dwarven factions like Ered Luin would be merged into 2 Orcarni factions called the Iron Fists and Stonebeard Coalition and the Black Locks and Stonefoots Coalition. This was a dev decision to essentially make their campaign gameplay more meaningful and have more opportunities for, let's say, challenging conflicts. The blog goes further into what we can expect playing either of these factions, with the number of cities you'll start with, the looming either wars or alliances between each other, and of course with their start positions being in the Red Mountains, poised to be under direct threat from Easterlings and Mordor. It should be a really fun couple of factions to play. The second dev blog we have here, which was only released a few days ago, is probably the more interesting one because it reveals the latest layout of the full campaign map in all its glory. Now, there is a lot to talk about here, but what the map basically shows us is the start positions for all the factions without any city placements just yet, but we can guess where they all will be really, and we can kind of get closer to analyze some potential decent conflicts and challenges, I suppose, that the player might face as playing some of these factions. Before we get into the campaign map though, I have to mention that there is a final list of playable factions and in what order they will be releasing. This is pretty big news. So there will be essentially 3 releases of the Dawnless Days campaign. In the next 6 to 12 months, we'll get the first release, which will include the full campaign map you see here, as well as 10 playable factions, including Gondor, Rohan, Dale, Isengard, Erebor, Woodland Realms, Mordor, Dol Guldur, Rurim, and Harad. The second release will add Lothlorien, Anduil Vale, Goblins, Gundabad, and the Iron Fist Stonebeard Coalition, and the final release will include the Blacklock Stonefoot Coalition, Linden, Imladris, Rangers, and Dunland. All in all, we'll have 20 playable factions officially released, although I'm pretty certain we'll get sub-mods making more factions playable with more units, etc. as well, but for now, let's look at those official factions on the campaign map. So the first thing that strikes me as just brilliant here is the potential for every faction you play to be equally as fun and interesting as the others. If you look at the south, for example, to the Haradrim, there is a really cool internal conflict between Harad, the jungle tribes of Far Harad to the east here, and of course the Corsairs on the coast to the west. So as Harad, for example, you'll have to go through some decent warring or perhaps diplomatic negotiating to unite these lands before you can take on the real war and support Mordor, which is really cool. Another great area to look at, of course, is the east, and as I mentioned before, you have the 2 Orcarni coalitions vying for control of the whole of the Red Mountains, but you also have the conflict between the Easterling tribes. So there are 2 major conflicts being fought here within one another, but also conflicts that can spill over into each other to cause a much wider Dwarven Easterling war, which would be awesome to play out. And then there's the trifecta major powers of Rohan, Gondor, and Mordor, each with their own problems, diplomatic, economic issues that the player will have to face and probably make some tough decisions on. I imagine Rohan with its weak-willed king, which probably, let's face it, will get its own mechanic. They will all face the wrath of Isengard as well as an opportunistic Dunland, while Gondor will have to defend its eastern borders versus Mordor, right? In an everlasting bulwark until a true king returns. Speaking of the true king, of course, we will eventually finally get the playable faction called the Rangers. Now, this is an interesting one because clearly this will be more of a small horde style faction, roaming lands for hire, maybe to quash incursions into Rohan, but I think we can all imagine that playing the Rangers faction will entail some storytelling from Aragorn's perspective, chapter missions perhaps to meeting the hobbits and ultimately defending the ring with the Fellowship. There's a lot that can be done here, so it'll be interesting to see what the devs are planning with it. Finally, we have the Elves of Middle-earth, who, according to the devlog, are dwindling in number as droves of their kind leave for the Undying Lands across the sea. This tells me we're going to have a really cool population mechanic, hopefully for the rest of the mod as well, but especially here for the Elves, where it will lead the player to making some tough decisions for recruitment, for replenishment, if that's going to be minimal or if they're at all. On the other hand, there is Galadriel, who by the sound of things may become corrupted over time by Sauron's influence, and Elrond, who the devlog says has a troubled future. Overall, on the map, there's a lot that we can take in here. We can still see large swaths of land in the white shade of local tribes, probably to be released as a sort of batch of independent strongholds and minor cities, while not much has been said about the Shire, about the Ents, for example, or even Mordor itself. The Hobbits will probably have a backseat role. The Ents will likely be a one-time event for Isengard to defend itself against their attack, while the mostly dormant Mordor will probably be an industrial powerhouse, constantly churning out stacks of orc armies ready to strike any nation of Middle-earth at any moment. Aside from the campaign map, we've also got the official Dawnless Days YouTube channel, which for the last 6 months has regularly featured modders working on the campaign map editing tool, working on new custom battle maps live, in live streams, and talking plainly about things like when we can expect the first release, how far along are the faction rosters, and more. It's here, for example, that you can take an even closer look at the finer details of what the campaign map will look like with the mountain ranges, rivers, and the seas of Middle-earth, and really hype yourself up for the eventual release. Overall, to me, it seems like Dawnless Days is in a place where the campaign map is inching closer and ever closer to release, with fine-tuning of the map, the constant building and tweaking of battle maps, and the polishing of those factions we'll be able to play in each of the 3 phases of release. All the rosters are there, all the characters are there, the artwork is there, many battle maps are ready, the units, everything is pretty much there. It's all now waiting on the campaign editing tool to be finalized to finish off the Dawnless Days map. And that's it for today, guys. I'm sure before the end of the year at least, we'll be seeing another big release like the one we got earlier this year with Moria, where factions like the Orcarni become playable, where new battle maps are added in, etc. Hopefully, this will be the last of its kind before we get the first official release of the playable campaign next year. Fingers crossed, though, that everything goes as planned for the dev team. If you're interested in finding out more, drop by the Dawnless Days Discord and the official YouTube channel, both of which I've linked below in the video description. The devs do regular previews and development live streams, so it's well worth keeping an eye on. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative. If you did, do give it a like, drop any thoughts or questions in the comment section below, and subscribe for more Total War content, gameplay, and news just like this. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.